This episode of the RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by AIM EC Herbicide from FMC. AIM EC Herbicide powers up your spring burn-off with control of the tough weeds like kochia and cleavers. And because it's a Group 14 product, AIM EC Herbicide is the cornerstone of a solid resistance management program.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much to everybody for making RealAg Radio and, of course, Rural Radio 147 a big part of your work day, and also everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Hello. I can't believe it's already Wednesday here this week. The week is really, really flying by. Today we're going to dig into a couple conversations. One I'm really, really proud of, okay? Now, recently, the list of who's going to receive the Order of Canada came out. Now, this is a very wide scope of list, recognizing great Canadians, people that have really contributed to Canada, and it's really, really cool when we have people from agriculture that are recognized. So officially, the Order of Canada is a Canadian state order and the second highest honor for merit in the system of orders, decorations, and medals of Canada after the Order of Merit. Okay? So recently, that list came out, as I mentioned, and somebody that was on the list is very familiar to many of you listening, Lorne Hepworth. Now, Lorne, he's retired now. He was the president and CEO of CropLife Canada, but he's done a bunch of other stuff. He's a politician, he was a vet, and has just done a wide variety of things and had a great impact on a lot of different people. And I was able to do a long form sit down with Lorne to talk about his career and talk about the Order of Canada. And I'm going to play a portion of that. I can't fit it all in here today, but I'm going to play a portion of it for you here today. And I hope you go to RealAgriculture.com and watch the full video of Lorne and I chatting about really his career and this great accomplishment. So we'll hit on that. We've also got a product spotlight from Genesis Fertilizer here today. Barrie Mann is going to talk about a few things with Lindsay Smith. And then I've got a clip of a portion of a conversation I had with Jacob Shapiro from Cognitive Investments, or Cognitive Investments, I should say. And we're going to talk about the Red Sea. What's happening in the Red Sea? It's really creating a lot of frustration when it comes to shipping lanes, and ships are having to go the long way around. Who wants to be on one of those ships that's going through that area? And the other thing is insurance companies are not really willing to provide insurance. So it's kind of a real disruption. And Jacob's going to get our head wrapped around what is going on and what the Houthis are doing and what's the U.S. doing and how to get this solved. And then we'll also have time today for the top ag news stories of the day. Now, if you have any feedback on today's program, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call us on the RealAg feedback line. That number is 855-776-6147. Now, got an email here from Ken. Ken is in Ontario, I believe. And Ken says, hey, Shaun, more than 10 years ago, I changed the way that I crop. A couple years later, I decided the soil testing in general ways was a waste of time. Since then, I have taken a few samples where I had concerns. With all the talk about soil biology, I decided to take some more samples. I was looking how biology fit in with what I was doing, so I split the samples and sent them to 2 different labs. I could not believe the results. On one field, in 10 years, organic material went from 3.3% to as high as 5.5%. That's impossible, I'm told. P&K went up significantly. Each year I apply about half of what I have been told removal rates are. My yields are near the top of our area. What I hear from agronomists is that it's impossible to get the yields I am with what I am doing. Well, Ken, it sounds like you're having a lot of success there, and having a hard time getting people to buy into what you're doing based on some of the things you're saying. But that's awesome. So, yeah, very, very. You know what? I'm not sure I agree that soil testing is a total waste of time. But boy, based on what you've said there, big time results when it comes to organic matter. So thanks for sending the email in, Ken. Really do appreciate it. And keep on listening to the show. Okay, we're going to take a break, and when we come back here on RealAg Radio, we're going to hear what Lorne Hepworth has to say about his career and receiving, or he's going to receive, the Order of Canada. You're listening to RealAg Radio. Of course, we're on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Co-op knows your community because we live here too. Our teams are your trusted partners with a range of expertise to help support your entire farm operation. And we're giving back. In the past 5 years, Co-op has invested over $1.1 billion in the prairies through building, upgrading, and expanding local facilities. And we've returned over $1.17 billion to Co-op members in the prairies. Co-op, we're all building something for the future. Here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Does your N stabilizer contain an active ingredient load high enough to be agronomically effective? If not, it could be costing you time and money. If you're putting down a nitrogen stabilizer, put your trust in Koch Agronomic Services. Solutions like Super U, Tribune, and Anvil. Each delivers high active ingredient concentrations that low-rate products just can't match. Compare how imitator products stack up to agronomically effective solutions at defendyourn.ca.
Got an email here from Joe who says, you're often talking about the countdown to spring. I wish that ticker would speed up. It's only been 2 weeks of really, really harsh winter. And quite frankly, I am tired of this frigid bunch of temperatures. Yeah, well, Joe, I think there's a lot of people who are going to agree for sure is more. But you know what? We will take the snow. Where I am in southern Alberta, we will take the snow, and a bunch supposed to fall, so we'll take it. Are you ready to revolutionize your farming practices and stay ahead in the ever-evolving world of agriculture? Well, join the Crossroads Crop Conference that's happening January 29th through the 31st at the Westin at the Calgary Airport. Register at the crossroadscropconference.ca. That's crossroadscropconference.ca, and get ready to examine the big picture and innovation in agriculture. Remember, that's not the Westin downtown. That's the Westin in Edmonton. That's the Westin at the Calgary Airport. Beautiful new hotel there and convention center. Well, Lorne Hepworth, former CEO of President and CEO of CropLife Canada, sat down with me to talk about the recent announcement that he is going to receive the Order of Canada this year. And here's a portion of our conversation. Enjoy. Off the top, congratulations. You got to be pretty excited.
Yeah, thank you. It's, when you get that call at one and the same time, it's, you're incredulous, you're humbled, and you're gratified, so I'm pretty sure I was, sounded pretty dumbfounded when I got the call, I'll put it that way.
So it wasn't something you've been preparing a speech for or anything like that?
No.
And you know what? I think it's kind of neat. And we have had people in agriculture that have, of course, received the Order of Canada. It's always great to see people who've made a tremendous contribution to the industry of agriculture recognized, not just in the industry, but amongst a broader set of Canadians as well. That's what I think is really cool about this. Lorne, now there's going to be some of our audience that's going to be like, they know you very well. They've worked alongside you. But for some of the audience that's unfamiliar with your career, let's talk about kind of what that looked like and what led to this kind of recognition. So give us a bit of a summary.
Well, I always tell people I really had 3 careers. The first one was the 12 years I spent in veterinary practice, mostly when I had my own practice in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. Really enjoyed that. Just great people, a great practice that we built up fairly substantially. And after 12 years, I ended up in politics, which I guess I would count as career number 2, which I did almost for 10 years as well, and was very fortunate to hold some, very interesting cabinet positions, Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Education, Minister of Energy and Mines, and Minister of Finance in the end.
Oh, wow.
So all very interesting. And then career number 3 was, working as president and CEO of what became, during my time, CropLife Canada, the industry association that represents the plant life science industry here in Canada, which is code words for those that don't know, the pesticide and GMO seed business. So, I mean, that was a really interesting nearly 20 years that I spent with them. A lot of change during that time in the industry with the introduction of genetically modified seeds. So a time of great change also corporately, lots of mergers and takeovers, those kinds of things as well. So that's kind of been the 3 careers, if you like. And then I did some, odd stuff, board stuff as well.
Yeah. So I actually didn't know, Lorne, that you started as a vet.
Yeah, I graduated from the University of Saskatchewan. Actually, we were the 3rd class to graduate out of what was then a relatively new veterinary college in Saskatoon. So I spent a couple of years initially with a great practice in Lloydminster, and then set up my own practice in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. And Weyburn was a city of 10,000. Our practice area was probably about a 30, 40, 50-mile radius all the way down to the border. So a relatively small community by many standards. So you really, a lot of your clients became your friends, and a lot of the people in small communities like that, you maybe didn't know all of them, but a lot of them knew you, which in some ways, in hindsight, not that I was planning it that way, but in hindsight, a country/small city vet, a great a great precursor into the world of politics in some ways, just because you get to know so many people and they get to know you.
I think it's a good example. I think I've got 3 kids that are in college, just entering their college careers, and there's a lot of stress that we put on kids where it's like, hey, what do you want to do with your life? What career do you want to pursue? And you're kind of a perfect example of how sometimes your career can take turns and lane changes that, no kid entering college would really be able to predict. So, obviously your interest in animal health, being a vet, owning your own practice in Weyburn, and then you fast forward ahead, like say we do, the Back to the Future, Marty McFly, and we skip ahead a number of years, and all of a sudden it's like president and CEO of CropLife Canada. Those 2 things, like same industry, but those are 2 entirely different parts of the sector. It's really interesting the path our career can take.
Yeah, I share with people the whole notion that if the same set of circumstances presented themselves again relative to these 3 careers, I'd make all the same decisions again. They were all equally rewarding in their own way. And, not that one set out to contemplate doing 3 careers, but I think to your point, it is a good example of young people shouldn't have to fear that if they start something, either they like it or they see something else that's even more interesting, to not be afraid to jump into it, right? When I went into politics, I didn't even know what they paid. Like, you don't even know if you're going to get elected, but I guess other guys seem to be able to buy groceries, so I guess must be able to. So, it's kind of like a leap of faith, some of those moves.
Who convinced you to go into politics?
Well, there is a story there. I'm kind of busy one spring and calving season in my practice, and really busy. The waiting room is full. There's trucks lined up. There's clients there with cats and dogs. We're busy. And a couple of guys come in looking pretty well dressed. I'm thinking right off the bat they aren't ranchers because they don't have on the signature cowboy boots. And they kind of politely wait until I've got a minute, and then they say, "Can I? We want like to talk to you. Could talk to you in your office?" Well, nobody ever wants to talk to me in my office, right? So
yeah, we're outside.
Anyways,
this is my office, by the way.
So we go in there, and I recognize them that they're a couple of the members of the Conservative Party, which was in the opposition at that time, and sit down at my desk, and I said, "Well, I suppose you guys are here for some money. I want a donation." So I kind of pull open the drawer of my desk and start to write out a check. And one of them says, "Well, we're not here for that, but we'll take the money anyways." And so they want to know if I, consider running for the party's nomination. And I say, thanks. I'm very flattered, but no thanks. I've kind of got my practice going pretty well, and a couple, 3 vets working for me now, and actually can have some time off once in a while. And so they left. And then I found out, this is kind of the world of politics and how it works, is over the next week, about twice a day, some local, what I didn't know at the time, but as it turned out, some local, relatively high profile member of the party would come and say, "Oh, I'd like to talk to you. I think you should consider running." He keeps saying no, but no thanks. And then pretty soon they think, well, it must be his wife that's the problem. So then they send people to see my wife. And anyways, at the end of the day, Fern said to me, "You know what? Maybe you should think about making a change. You seem a little more grumpy when you speed off to do a calving at 2 a.m. So maybe I should think about a change." So that's kind of how it happened. Yeah. And then, I was lucky enough to get the nomination and to be elected, and fortunate that I had, like I said, some interesting portfolios, and also didn't ever have to serve in the opposition benches. So you're always in a position where you could actually make some changes, whether people viewed them as good, bad, or ugly is another matter. But that's kind of the interesting part, when you can actually, make policy and legislative changes.
So you mentioned Minister of Agriculture, and this is in Manitoba.
Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan. Yes, right. Weber, Saskatchewan. This is in Saskatchewan. Minister of Agriculture, Minister of, you said, Energy, right?
Yep.
And Finance.
And Education. Yep.
And Education. So that's a pretty broad, those are major portfolios in a cabinet. How similar, when you were Minister of Agriculture, how similar or different was that experience from those other portfolios?
I would say agriculture is a bit unique in this way. Every year, and it still happens, the federal, provincial, territorial ministers get together in all of these areas. But when I was in agriculture, we had our summer, typically a July meeting, and it was held in different provinces over the course of the years. And your deputy, assistant deputies, senior officials would come with you. And in agriculture, it wasn't uncommon for it to be a fairly family affair. And notwithstanding the different political ideologies that might be around the table, at the end of the day, there was collegiality and a mutual respect, like I said, notwithstanding the different political parties that were around the table. And I contrast that to energy and mines, education even, and finance, where there just isn't that same collegial community, at least when I was there, it just didn't have that same special feel that agriculture did, which I think really speaks to the nature of the agriculture business, in quotation marks, maybe in Canada and maybe even in the world. It's just a very nice collegial, we may be of different political stripes, but at the end of the day, we're all interested in accomplishing the same things. And in some ways, all you ever argue about is how you're going to do it. To be agriculture minister in Saskatchewan, because of the importance of agriculture there, you're always pretty honored to ever be able to hold that portfolio.
Yeah, it is one of the provinces, and it may be the, I probably should be a little bit more even to the point here. I think it's the province still in this country where the broader population of that province very firmly understands the importance of agriculture to the overall economic prosperity of that province. Even in Alberta, I think we've kind of like Calgary, Calgary has other interests, like, sure, for 10 days during the Stampede, it's like, we're all cowboys and cowgirls. But in Saskatchewan, I just think the attitude, Atlantic Canada may be like second, like, the provinces in Atlantic Canada, I think but Saskatchewan, it's still very firmly rooted in what agriculture, they understand. You could go to the middle of Saskatoon or Regina and people are still, they understand ag.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, an interesting anecdote. So when the Aussie company was looking to take over the Potash Corporation, Brad Wall was the premier in a pretty lively debate. I can remember my mom, who was probably in her 80s back then, and obviously had been on the farm virtually all of her life. But, she phones me and says, "Did you hear they're trying to take over the Potash Corp?" So, even at her age, I mean, she understood this was important stuff and critical stuff to Saskatchewan, So you're right. It gets less every year probably in terms of the connection to agriculture, just because, every generation is one more generation removed. But still, I agree that there's still probably a bigger percentage of the population there that have a feel for the world of agriculture and empathize when there's droughts and hailstorms and, collapses in pricing, those kinds of things.
Yeah. You said you wouldn't, these 3 careers, you wouldn't make any changes. But I just want to imagine for a second, I'm curious because politics has changed. Partisanship has become, it's stronger, right? It's a little bit more tribal than maybe it was going back a number of years. Would you go into politics today?
I always tell people I did my turn. It's up to you young people to do it now. But your observations are right on. It's a lot tougher. I'm glad I was there when I was there. Yeah, it's definitely a lot tougher now for some of the reasons you mentioned. It's become very hyper partisan in many provinces and in the country. You've got this rural urban split. There's the whole social media thing. It's 24/7. Everybody's trying to grab eyeballs or sound eardrums all the time. And even in the 10 years I was there, ending in 91, by the end of that time, it had also, some of that collegiality had seeped into, the relationships between MLAs across the aisle. But initially, when I was first there, and Minister of Agriculture, Alan Engels was from Assiniboia, actually. My home farm area was my critic in opposition. And even though he might go after me real hard in question period, when we broke at 5 o'clock to go have dinner, we'd walk down the steps. Hey, you want to go for dinner? We'd go for dinner. How were the kids? How was the crop? There was that level of respect, notwithstanding we both had jobs to do. And that for sure, I think, has disappeared and maybe is totally not hardly. I mean, not that some still don't undertake that, but it's getting rarer and rarer, I would say.
That's Lorne Hepworth. He's now retired, but he's former president and CEO of CropLife Canada, former politician in Saskatchewan, as well as a vet. And there's another whole half of that interview. Okay, so I encourage you to go to RealAgriculture.com and listen to the full thing. It's also on our YouTube channel as well. And if you're subscribing to the Real Agriculture podcasts, you would have got that already in wherever you're getting your podcast. So I wanted to just give you a touch of it today, and I encourage you to listen to the whole thing, and I really appreciate Lorne sitting down with me to have that discussion. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to hear a product spotlight with Genesis Fertilizers right after this.
When you see how fast Intruvix 2 herbicide from FMC smacks down narrow-leaved hawksbeard, volunteer canola, kochia, and those other problem weeds, you'll be saying, stronger and faster. Shut the front door. Apply it with glyphosate before planting cereals, and you'll enjoy cleaner fields faster while protecting your future glyphosate use. Cheese and crackers. Just how easy can you get? Intruvix 2 herbicide from FMC. Clean is good. See your local retailer.
As you look ahead to the next growing season, there's a lot to consider when it comes to your crop. You need every possible advantage available to you. The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com has everything you need to make the best choice for you and your farm. On-demand videos with leading industry experts available anywhere, anytime. Go into the season confident and ready with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern. Welcome back to Real Ag Radio. It is time for today's product spotlight, and joining me on the line is Barrie Mann. He's the Vice President of Investor Relations for Genesis Fertilizers. Welcome here, Barrie.
Hi, Lindsay. Great to speak with you again.
Yes, we got to talk last time too, so this is exciting. All right, so Barrie, catch everyone up to speed. Who or what is Genesis Fertilizers? And we're talking about an exciting project. What is this project?
So the project is essentially bringing farmers together to create a vertically integrated fertilizer company based on the prairies, but we'll be working right across Canada with farmers. And it's to give farmers the opportunity to, take advantage of the abundant supply that we have of natural gas, create our own nitrogen fertilizer from that and deliver it direct to the farm. It's one of those items on your farm that you use a lot of. You use it every year, and we can make it here. And it's just an opportunity that was too good to not move forward with, and we are now in full execution mode.
All right. So then what are the major drivers that are bringing farmers together to take an ownership position and secure their urea supply in Genesis at this stage?
Yeah, it's getting interesting, right? When we're seeing the dynamics happening across the world, and also, of course, in North America, and we're seeing a lot of movement in the supply and demand, overview of the fertilizer usage and the fertilizer market. Just in the last 3 years, there's new data that's come out, and it's showing now that just in Canada, we're about a 1.2 million ton import position. 3 years ago, when we said it's go time, let's get this project across the finish line and get started, it was 700,000 ton. So just in the last 3 years, if you look at the raw data, that's a 70% increase in the import position. So you look at 1.2 million ton, and you look at the size of this project. We're not even filling the gap on that import position. So that's a huge mover, and I think it's something that farmers are really starting to identify with. And then on the other side of it, that's the demand. Then you look at the market, the supply side. And where's that supply going to come from? And it's kind of scary when you really look at it. When, we have nothing other than Genesis. When you look at the latest data, again, you look out over the next 7-8 years, there's no other projects on the drawing board in North America. So if that shortfall continues to increase, where's that supply going to come from? And when I say scary, you look at the geopolitical risk and the other things in the world that's happening today. I think everybody's well aware of it. But you look at the top exporting nations, right? So you've got Russia, you've got Qatar, you've got Iran, you've got Saudi Arabia, you've got Egypt and Oman and Algeria. You've got mostly Middle East contenders, and China's in there as well. And farmers are just saying, well, do I want to have an opportunity to control this supply myself and become vertically integrated? Or do I want to rely on, these unstable partners around the world that I think we're all aware of the situation? So it's really, I think, being highlighted over the last 6 months or even the last year with the Russian-Ukraine situation, that if we can do this at home, why don't we?
So now, very quickly, just outline for me investing in this project, a farmer that does, they're still going to pay market price for the product, but they're going to see a benefit in the payback after, right? Is that how this works?
Yeah, I think you've pretty well summarized it. With the vertical integration, we're not out to bust the market. We're just Genesis farmers and fertilizer companies is going to join the market, right? So yeah, we'll be selling at market price, but because the farmers are the owners, because they're the shareholders, they just also are going to happen to be the customer. So based on the amount of fertilizer that they purchase, that they use on their farm, the average farmer is taking an ownership stake in the project based on those tons, so that at the end of the day, when there's profit derived in the industry in Western Canada is quite profitable, those profits come back to the farm. So at the end of the day, their net cost will be as close to that manufacturer's cost as possible. Not always. There's going to be factors involved, but yes, that's how it works. We're going to be selling at market price, and the owners of the plant, primarily the farmers, they're going to receive those dividends or distributions directed back to the farm to offset their original purchase.
All right. Now, we did speak just a little while ago on this, and so what updates do you have on design and engineering of the project and the equity stage of this project?
Right. So I'll just touch base quickly on the equity and just follow up from what I was just mentioning. So, yeah, we've definitely seen an escalation in farmers jumping on board over the last number of months, and we're about to close out on our second tranche. We've had a bit of a discount on the shares in the early going to recognize the longer term the money would be at play. It's a little higher risk, of course, because it's early on, and that's coming to an end at the end of January. So we're seeing a bit of a flurry of farmers trying to take advantage of those lower share prices, but things are moving along quite well, actually. We're pleased with it, and we're just getting ready to launch a fairly major initiative down in Eastern Canada as well.
All right, wonderful. Well, Barrie, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. We'll talk again.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate you reaching out.
All right, we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Whether you're in a career within an organization, starting your own business, looking for your dream job, running your own farming operation, operating a company in ag or food, or want to hone your overall life skills, this conference is for you. Celebrating over 10 years of bringing women in ag together, join the Advancing Women Conference in Calgary on March 17th, 18th, and 19th. Visit advancingwomenconference.ca for more information and to register.
There's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup to weed control, field trial results, and the latest yield strategies. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast in your favorite podcast app. Check out the latest Corn School episode today.
Earlier we played the audio from my discussion with Lorne Hepworth, who's going to receive the Order of Canada. And, I think it's great to be able to take the opportunity and celebrate the contribution that people have made to this industry. Too many times, I think people, commit their career. Their being is committed to this industry, and they have so much passion for it. They've got dedication for it. Other things suffer because they feel so strongly about what they're trying to accomplish. And then they retire, and then poof. And it was interesting. I was at a retirement party for a friend in December who often listens to this show. And it was interesting. We're at the retirement party, and it was a big shebang. It was a shindig. It was good. It was a surprise, and it was really fantastic. And somebody had commented to me that, hey, this is kind of a dying thing. We don't do this anymore. And one of the reasons is because, one, people switch jobs a lot more than they used to, right? There's a lot of career pivots. I actually heard a speaker about a year ago that said the average college student today will have 20 different careers in their lifetime. That's not 20 different jobs, which also seems very high to me. She said careers. Okay. So it's really hard to have a retirement party for somebody like that because they've never really been in a place too long to really connect any roots, so to speak. So I think it's great when we're able to really celebrate some of the contributions that people have made. Now, whether that's politically, whether that's on the industry side, quite frankly, we should do it more often for people that are in the primary space as well. And we do have things like the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame, which is really, really important. Obviously, there's more mainstream things like the Order of Canada. There's lots of ways to recognize people, but some of the provinces have their own agricultural hall of fames, which are good as well. Saskatchewan just put out the list, and it's posted at RealAgriculture.com. But I think this is important stuff. We've got to celebrate the contributions that people have made. I encourage you to go back and listen to that entire interview that I did with Lorne Hepworth. Well, I'll tell you what, time is running out to register for the 2024 Crop Connect Conference. Join us February 14th and 15th at the Victoria Inn and Convention Center in Winnipeg for insightful speakers, crop-specific information, networking, and a whole lot more. Register today at cropconnectconference.ca. Well, I want to spend some time now playing some audio from a conversation I had this week with Jacob Shapiro from Cognitive Investments. Jacob is somebody that I've connected with on the road over the past couple of years, and great geopolitical analyst. He's based out of New Orleans, Louisiana, and where it's quite cold there this week, quite chilly. Not Western Canada cold, but it's pretty chilly in New Orleans. And Jacob, we do a Frontlines podcast once a month. Okay, and it's called Frontlines, and you can find it wherever you get your podcasts, and also at RealAgriculture.com. And one of the topics that we cover this week is what's happening in the Red Sea. This has really been a disruption to shipping lanes. It's been a disruption to the global economy. It's got the U.S. Taking military action. It's got the Houthis who are creating all this disturbance, not really backing down. And so I talked to Jacob about this issue, these chain of events, and how do we interpret what is happening here, and what does it mean for all of us that feel like this is so far away, but it does impact us back here at home. Here's my conversation with Jacob Shapiro of Cognitive Investments. What's happening in the Red Sea? We're seeing shipping rates increasing. We're seeing, obviously, a lot of disruption to some of the global economy. What do we make of this situation that has really kind of escalated over the past couple weeks?
It has. So, I mean, this is sort of a byproduct of the October 7th Hamas attacks against Israel. And you haven't seen any national actors quite yet been willing to throw their hat in the ring to support Hamas. But you have the Houthis, who are this Iranian-backed element that are in most parts of Yemen, who have taken to firing missiles and rockets and drones and things like that at the ships that are trying to go through the Red Sea. And the United States, with a coalition of powers, finally responded last week, struck some sites on the ground in Yemen, and it has not deterred them. So since the United States and the UK in particular, and then some support from some other states, since they attacked those Houthi elements, they apparently did not knock out their capacities to continue attacking ships in the Red Sea, because there have been attempted attacks already this week. There have also been sort of reports in just the last 24 or 36 hours that the IRGC, so the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran, has dispatched some of its troops or some of its people into Yemen to support the Houthis as well. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. But at the end of the day, the thing that you need to know is that shipping in the Red Sea is coming to a grinding halt. Shipping companies aren't willing to go through there. Insurance companies don't want to insure them going through there. And with crude sitting at 71, 72 a barrel, why not just take the longer route around Africa? So you add a couple days onto your trip. But if oil is going to stay this low and the Red Sea is going to stay this hot, probably the Red Sea is going to be closed for a period of weeks or months, especially if it looks like the United States can't get control of the situation, which is what it is starting to look like right now.
What is motivating the Houthis? Why are they doing this?
They are one of Iran's proxies. So they're in the same sort of weird camp as Hezbollah and Hamas, all of which are very, very, when I say strange, these are very, very different groups with different religious affiliations, with different ideologies, with different interests. But the one thing that links them is that they are Iranian proxies. And the Houthis are the one sort of element in the region that has not been willing to tolerate what Israel is doing in the Gaza Strip quietly. So they say that they are, trying to, express their support for Gazans and Palestinians, and specifically Hamas, by attacking these elements. And the goal here is obviously they're not striking at Israel per se, but they're striking at the reputation of the United States. The United States is supposed to be the guarantor of, freedom of navigation in the open seas. And so if you start going after, these ships and things like that, and you start taking resources away from supporting Israel to having to divert to attacking the Houthis, that's part of the logic here. But I take your question as a good one, because if this is the most of the, if this is the maximum fallout, regional fallout that we get from the Israel-Gaza war, it's not going to be that big of a deal, because the Houthis are a very, very small element, and they will probably be subdued one way or another. So you can take it two ways. You can take it as oh my God, Red Sea shipping has become extremely unsafe, and that's why we're going to see higher shipping rates, and maybe this is more inflation and things like that. The flip side of this is people were talking about World War III in the Middle East 2 months ago. Not me. We were talking about it more soberly on the podcast, but that was the general narrative out there. And the Houthis firing some drones and rockets at some ships and the United States heading them back, that's not World War III. That's basically the same sort of thing that's been happening for 30 years.
From the U.S. perspective, how did they react to the fact that this hasn't deterred the Houthis? Is it something that they just sort of let slip and go quietly, or is there could we see some sort of escalation from the U.S. side at this point based on the lack of reaction from the Houthis?
I've been surprised at the weakness of the American response. It took them weeks to actually organize attacks against the Houthis themselves, and then the fact that you haven't been able to deter them, that's not a very good sign either. We have precedent for this. The United States did this in 2016. It did it in 1988 and actually struck Iranian targets back then too, when shipping in the Red Sea was threatened. It wasn't the Houthis at that point, but the Middle East is sort of, the names change, but the game is always the same. So if you want to give the charitable interpretation, the Biden administration doesn't want to do this on its own. It's trying to build a coalition of allies and trying to do this in concert with those other allies. But the flip side of that is the United States kind of looks weak. And I don't understand it, in part because while polling data in the U.S. suggests that there is that there's significant level of disagreement and dissatisfaction with how the Biden administration has supported Israel in its war in the Gaza Strip, most people, or a majority of Americans, are totally fine with the United States firing on targets in Yemen to open up Red Sea shipping. So Bernie Sanders might go on the floor of the Senate and rail about the Yemen issue again, but that's the maximum of what you're going to get. So it's been a little confusing to me why the Biden administration is trigger shy here.
Is the fact it's Iran on the other side and fear of escalation? Is that a consideration here?
That sort of underscores the point, though. If the United States is afraid of the Iranian response, then you really are in a much weaker position than you were even 4 or 5 years ago, because Iran also doesn't have that many conventional capabilities to bring to bear. They have not demonstrated that they want this conflict to escalate, even though it's their proxy that is getting its butt whooped by the Israelis right now. Not to mention, Iran is trying, they want the sea lanes open themselves. They're trying to export oil to China and anybody else who will buy their oil and things like that. They need the money themselves. So maybe the United States is afraid of Iran or afraid of some kind of regional escalation. But if you're afraid of that, we're already in a very, very different world than we were even 6-7 years ago in terms of American power.
That's a whole different problem or issue or challenge or whatever you want to phrase that. And from a domestic political standpoint in the U.S., in an election year, the last thing that President Biden wants to be is deemed as looking weak because, quite frankly, this has been, from the other side of the aisle, this has been the criticism that Republicans have had of the president. Now, has he been pragmatic? Yes, to a certain extent, but pragmatism only goes so far. There's going to be a lot of calling here there's going to be pressure on the president to make a decision on which fork in the road do they take when it comes dealing with this situation with the Houthis and the Red Sea. And they're like Jacob described, they're a proxy for Iran. And there's going to be people calling for, don't do anything because we don't want to create that World War III scenario like Jacob talked about. And maybe that's being hyperbolic. The World War III is there. I don't know. That's for others to decide and provide analysis for. But there's also going to be some pressure in an election year where possibly if the candidate is President Trump, he's going to be talking very tough about dealing with the Houthis. Okay, so this is the contrast in an election year that the president has to deal with, which makes it a little bit more complicated. And I guess we want peace, but we also know the Democrats want to get reelected. So complicated matter indeed. Encourage you to check out the entire interview that I did with Jacob Shapiro. We talk about what do we make of the Taiwanese elections this past weekend, and what does it mean for Taiwan's independence in dealing with China. And we also talk a little bit about what's happening in Argentina as they have a new leader, and how do we evaluate the early days of that, because there's a lot of agricultural trade that is Argentina's a player. And if they get their poop in a group, so to speak, Argentina figures out their stuff. What does it mean for the global trade market when it comes to especially things like beef and soybeans? Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to dig in on the top ag news stories of the day right after this.
CDC Endure is a new oat line from Alliance Seed. High yielding with excellent disease resistance and the quality end users ask for, all in one great oat variety. CDC Endure provides the high beta-glucan levels to make heart-healthy products like breakfast cereals. For more information on CDC Endure Oats, as well as any other products from Alliance Seed, check out allianceseed.com or visit any Alliance Seed authorized retailers.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground, we are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
We've got some time here at the back end of the show to talk about some of the top ag news stories of the day. A lot happening around the world. This segment's brought to you by Genesis Fertilizers. Nitrogen fertilizer is your number one farm expense. Farmers are working together through Genesis Fertilizers to solve the problem of high prices and security of supply by planning a state-of-the-art nitrogen plant, security and earnings through ownership. It's the solution. Visit Genesis today at genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. Okay, top ag news stories of the day here on RealAg Radio. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said if Trump wins a second term, it would require Canada to adjust its approach to relations with its number one trading partner. Trudeau, whose center-left Liberals came to power in November of 2015, had rocky relations with Trump during his first four-year White House term. In 2018, Trump accused Trudeau of being weak and dishonest. It wasn't easy the first time, and if there was a second time, it won't be easy either, Trudeau said in French during a discussion hosted by the Montreal Chamber of Commerce. He also added, but we can't imagine a day when it will ever be easy with the Americans. The main responsibility for any prime minister is to represent and defend Canada's interests. We've been able to do this very well these past few years. Of course, remember that there's going to be a renegotiation of the USMCA CUSMA agreement in 2016. I've continually said that I do not think Canada is, I don't know if we're being naive, but I think we got a bit of our head in the sand about how difficult and rocky this could be, no matter which side of the political aisle is in the White House at that time. So I do believe this very strongly. There's an ever-growing protectionist, and this is not just in the U.S., but this is in a lot of places around the world. So this is not going to be an easy renegotiation, in my opinion. Now, oil prices, Brent crude futures dropped below $78 a barrel on Wednesday. This decline was primarily due to the strength of the U.S. dollar, which became stronger as traders reduced their expectations of a rate cut by the Federal Reserve in March. Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller suggested that the central bank might not cut interest rates as aggressively as the market had anticipated. Speaking of rate cuts, Canada's annual inflation rate rose to 3.4% in December, up from 3.1% in November, according to StatsCan. Now, that kind of matched financial analysts' expectations, according to the Globe and Mail. Inflation in Canada is likely to remain a bigger threat than in the United States due to the high growth in Canadian wages and shelter costs, which could see the central bank shifting to interest rate cuts after the Federal Reserve. The The Canadian economy is flirting with recession, contrasting with recent strong U.S. growth. That has begun to open up spare capacity in the economy, such as raising unemployment, which is a key part of taming pricing pressures. Now, if Canada is a little bit more subjected to a possible recession here in 24, Canada's really going to be cheering for the U.S. not to suffer the same sort of fate, because that would be even probably doubly worse. Probability of a recession is down sharply according to the Wall Street Journal's latest survey of economists. But for a lot of people, it's still going to feel like a recession. Business and academic economists surveyed by the Wall Street Journal lower the probability of a recession within the next year to 39% from 48% back in October. Still, economists on average expect the economy to grow just 1% in 2024, about half its normal long run rate, and a significant slowing down from an estimated 2.6% in 2023. The Minister of Environment and Climate Change was tweeting away here, it would be yesterday, or 2 days ago. So he said, today, 8 out of 10 Canadians across Ontario, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, PEI, Nova Scotia, and Newfoundland will get more money back through the pollution pricing rebates, the climate action incentive, than they pay in carbon pollution pricing. Here's what you need to know. Now, and again, I still do not understand how you get more back than you paid. This just all seems like some sort of complicated black box. Now, he does say later on in the tweet thread, starting in April of 2024, the top-up of quarterly rebates for rural Canadians will double to 20%, ensuring that the system is fair and that the majority of Canadians' jurisdictions where the federal applies will be better off. Fishers and farmers are exempt from the federal fuel charge on gasoline and diesel used for eligible activities. 97% of on-farm emissions are not subject to the price on pollution. Proceeds from the use of natural gas and propane by farmers are returned directly to farmers. So, question though, so we could do a whole segment on this and providing some little critiques of what the Minister of Environment and Climate Change is talking about. But why fight? And it's very well known that he fought Bill C-234 so diligently. There was even rumors out there that he was going to basically step down out of cabinet if that legislation went through after they provide the exemption on heating, in Atlantic Canada. So, yeah, we don't need to talk more about that. Okay, Chinese population shrinks again as births fall to record low. China's population fell for a second consecutive year in 2023 as record low birth rates and a wave of COVID-19 deaths when strict lockdowns ended accelerated a downturn that will have major long-term effects on the economy's growth potential. The National Bureau of Statistics said the total number of people in China dropped by 2.08 million or 0.15%. to 1.409 billion in 2023. That was well above the population decline of 850,000 in 2022, which had been the first since 1961 during the Great Famine. Total deaths last year rose 6.6% to 11.1 million. If you have any feedback on today's show, I'd love to hear from you. Is there things that you heard from Lorne Hepworth today that inspire you and provide some feedback? Or what about what Jacob Shapiro had to say about what's happening in the Red Sea? Do you think that President Biden looks weak in the sense that the Houthis still continue to roll on with creating disruption in the Red Sea? Let me know. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can talk about that or any of the issues that are impacting agriculture in Canada, the United States. We love to hear from you. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio, and we will chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode of the RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by AIM-EC Herbicide from FMC. Whether applied with glyphosate or another labeled tank mix partner, fast-acting AIM-EC Herbicide is the go-to tank mix product for the hottest burn-off of the toughest weeds. Start out clean this spring with AIM-EC Herbicide.